Hi, I'm Alex Regg and welcome to Pullingfocus. Today we're going to have a look at the hit Marvel Studio film, Doctor Strange, alongside the box office monster of 1999, The Matrix. Doctor Strange is interesting because it hits many of the familiar superhero notes, but does a couple of things rather differently. For one, it presents a radical departure from the standard hero canon in that Strange himself is not super due to some accident of birth or science, nor is he even a super genius who can invent tools effective enough to place him in the superhuman category. Instead, he's simply a mortal who learns to be special by seeing the truth of the world.
How did you become a doctor?
Study and practice, years of it.
Much like Neo in The Matrix, Dr. Stephen Strange is simply a human being who has had the wool removed from his eyes, and what he discovers underneath is quite spectacular. The first Doctor Strange comics came out in 1963 and were ahead of their time. They accurately predicted the soon-to-follow hippie fascination with Eastern mysticism and psychedelic experiences, and as a result had a very large cultural impact. The comics always had a surrealistic element in their artwork, and that has translated particularly well into the film format. One of the limitations, if you will, of recent Marvel films has been a certain cinematic predictability. Iron Man set the aesthetic mould, and in many ways the other films have failed to find their own look and feel, although we can give a little bit of credit to Thor and the first Captain America for doing things a bit differently.
I think it works.
Doctor Strange, on the other hand, has the advantage of a long history of comic surrealism and artistry, and the film uses this to completely spectacular effect.
Peering through time.
For a comic, Doctor Strange had quite a powerful effect in literary circles. The writer Ken Kesey and his outfit, the Merry Pranksters, were deeply into Doctor Strange comics back in the 1960s. You might know Kesey as the guy who wrote One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which became the Oscar-winning film starring Jack Nicholson in 1975.
Do you think there's anything wrong with your mind, really?
Not a thing, Doc.
This interest in Doctor Strange by the Merry Pranksters is talked about in the Tom Wolfe novel, The Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test, about the crazy psychedelic experiments these guys did on themselves. And if you're interested in delving a bit deeper, there's another novel that mentions the acid test parties these guys threw. Hell's Angels, the Hunter S. Thompson book.
They wrapped the pineal gland, I think. Yeah. Now, how's your mama?
Ignore this terrible drug.
When we look at convergences between Doctor Strange and The Matrix, there are a lot of things in common. We have an everyday professional who suddenly discovers there's more to the world than they realised. We have a character who goes down the rabbit hole and finds a whole new wonderland waiting.
This doesn't make any sense.
Not everything does. Not everything has to.
You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
We have prodigies that eventually outstrip their sensei. And did you notice that both of the senseis are bald? Both films have heroes who, through deeper understanding, begin to manipulate the world around them, and through this, save all of humanity from an existential threat. Interestingly, the Wachowskis, when making The Matrix, were heavily influenced by comic books, and went so far as to completely storyboard the first Matrix film as a comic, with comic artists doing the art. Before ever going to make the film, they then used the book to show studios the vision they had for what they wanted to make, and it worked. They got their funding. So there you go, both films started out as comic books. Fun fact, originally Stan Lee and artist Steve Ditko over at Marvel wanted to call the character Mr. Strange, but decided against it because it was too close to Mr. Fantastic from the Fantastic Four. Strangely enough, because Benedict Cumberbatch's character is an English doctor, or an English surgeon no less, his title actually would be Mr., because under the Commonwealth system a surgeon's proper title is Mr. It's one of those strange things where you go from being a Mr. to a doctor and back to a Mr. again at the top level. So the name would have worked for an English surgeon.
Mr. Henderson?
My name is Neo.